Andrew Huberman in the house.
So the dopamine pathway is intimately tied to the reproductive hormone pathway. So testosterone and dopamine have a very close relationship. So much so that they're released, and their triggering of their release is from very neighboring areas in the brain. Because if you think about it, it's the pursuit molecule, right? Like testosterone's main effect is to make stress and effort feel good. That's what it does. It suppresses that kind of grinding response, like it's painful, and it increases recovery. In women, which are more estrogen dominant than testosterone dominant, and both men and women both have testosterone and estrogen, of course, estrogen is sort of similar to testosterone in that it's coupled to dopamine. A lot of people think the opposite of testosterone is estrogen. It's not. It's a molecule called prolactin. Prolactin is what's secreted after orgasm. It's what's secreted after a big win, and there's that crash. It's designed to keep organisms in the place they are so that there's pair bonding, there's recovery, and shift them into that serotonin regimes. So the reason I mention this is that being in pursuit of goals and trying to trigger neuroplasticity isn't just about changing your brain. It's closely linked to the reproductive hormones, testosterone in men and estrogen in women, meaning it's linked to the will to live. The will to pursue, and it's not just about sex. I know as soon as we talk about testosterone and estrogen, people think about mating behavior. It's that, but there's a lot more. It's the will to live. So when dopamine is reduced, the will to live is reduced. When serotonin is too high and dopamine is too low, people feel like they have everything they need. Think chronic pot smokers. No beef against the pot smokers, but they don't tend to be the most ambitious people. Sometimes they are, but they tend to make people pretty placid. Think, any high levels of antidepressants that make you feel like you have enough of everything you need, they make people there's a passivity there. So that's why it's important to keep these things in the right range. So the will to live is tied to the dopamine system and to the reproductive system.
So what are we doing when we don't have a goal in our life? What happens to us?
We are essentially on idle. It doesn't mean that we don't have the will to live. It means that we are idling, and the brain and body, because they are so intimately related with one another and affect one another, they see when we're in pursuit of a goal, and that sends every organ in the body the message to keep going. That the will to live is getting at a kind of a deeper abstract concept, but it's a real thing. And so people that are low in estrogen, and typically in women, or in men, people that are low in testosterone, or low in dopamine. So it's ultimately dopamine, which is motivation and drive and pursuit. You don't want it too high, but you definitely don't want it too low.
And in order to increase our dopamine, we do some of these tools.
Right, you want to be in pursuit of something. You want friction, but you also want to be able to reward the effort process, reward that friction process. Now keep in mind, children, which have the ultimate will to live, in positive environments, children are wonderful because they're all about the will to explore and live and learn. That it's just their default is to explore, live, and learn. And children are flooded with dopamine. You show them a baby something new, and it's like, because the Mother Nature has wired them to use that process to incorporate new ideas and new learnings.
That's how they can learn.
That's how they learn.
The more dopamine they have, they can learn, they connect ideas, and they can grow.
They play. I mean, you tell kids a story, a ridiculous story, and they'll go with you on that. As we become set in our ways, it's kind of interesting. The brain, over time, the space between the neurons tends to fill in with this stuff called extracellular matrix. It's like pouring concrete between the neurons. It makes it much harder for them to rearrange and move around. But a lot of beautiful studies, experimental studies, have shown that extracellular matrix, if it can be reduced, the neurons can move around and form new connections. And the way to do that is by triggering some strong pursuit goal. The more important the goal is, the faster the plasticity is going to happen.